Welcome back. We have Bruce Logan and Elaine Head joining us, the authors of this book, Back to Vietnam, Tours of the Heart. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
So you guys are doing a book talk or a book presentation, about your novel tonight at the library at 7 o'clock downtown here in Kamloops. So if anybody wants to go there, they should get there early because it'll start right at 7 o'clock. But we want to talk to you, first of all, a little bit about this novel. This is something that you both came together to write. How long did it take to come up with the idea of writing this?
well, firstly, Tanya, it's not a novel. It's nonfiction.
Okay, a memoir, is that a better way to sort of describe it? Okay.
Yes. And it took us probably 2 years of thinking before we started to write it. We've been traveling to Vietnam together for the past 8 years and living there for as long as 3 months at a time.
Wow.
And it took us 2 years of thinking about it before we took pen to paper, and then it took us another 2 years to finish the manuscript.
Right. This is a novel that, or excuse me, a memoir, I keep saying novel, that takes, would you say, takes the reader through the battle-torn history of Vietnam and then sort of where Vietnam is today? Is that an easy way to describe what this is about?
It's a good description. Bruce served in the war in Vietnam, 2 tours.
Wow.
And so obviously the first part of the book is a description of that experience and what Vietnam was like at that time. And then 40 years later, we went back with a group of returning veterans. And we just fell in love with the country and the people, and saw a great need there for humanitarian support. And so we've been going back ever since. Wow. So the book is, yes, the war, the effect of the war on the Americans and some Canadians who served, as well as the effect on the Vietnamese people, and then now what the country is like. And they are still suffering from those effects of the war. Right. So it's a then and now story.
And Bruce, you served in the U.S. Army, right?
I did, yes.
Yes, okay. What was that like, if I can ask you? Just some of the, just maybe give us a feel as to how you would describe that in a book like this.
Well, I had 2 one-year tours of duty there as an Army officer. During the first one, I was an infantry platoon leader, so I was pretty much in the thick of things, saw combat, saw people die. It was fairly ugly. Second tour was a little bit more removed from combat. I was in a high-level headquarters. But during that second tour, that assignment gave me a chance to really understand the big picture about how futile the war was.
Yeah.
And it began to sensitize me a little bit to the culture of Vietnam and the people of Vietnam, who at that time had no loyalty to any side. You know, they were pretty much villagers who were bonded to their rice paddy, their ancestors, and could care less who was governing them because they didn't feel governed until somebody came in with guns.
Wow. Who would be most interested in reading this? Is this a book for anyone, would you think?
It's interesting when you begin to market a book, you have to be pretty clear about who your audience is.
Of course.
And we were clear on one aspect, and that was that veterans would be interested in the story of a veteran returning with his wife and becoming involved in humanitarian work. We got that one right. But we realized that people going to Vietnam, even as tourists, would be interested in the book because it's very descriptive of the country. We forgot a huge contingent of Viet Q. Those are Vietnamese who have come to North America, Europe, during or after the war. And they and their now children are really interested in this book.
Yes.
We just got a letter from a woman who is a Viet Q in the United States. And she said that the book filled a lot of gaps in her knowledge about the country of her ancestors.
Wow.
And obviously people who are considering doing humanitarian work in a third world country would like to know what the experience is.
Of course, especially a place like Vietnam, you know, it's not the first place you think of going when you think humanitarian work, so that's quite interesting. This is obviously based on a true story, but who are the characters? Because they would be changed a little bit, right?
Well, the cast of characters includes, of course, Elaine and myself. There are flashbacks to the war years, and so a number of the men I served with in combat are briefly described, and incidentally, I'm still in touch with many of them who are very proud of our endeavor to publish this book.
Great.
It includes the Vietnamese who suffered, because we've come to know a good many Vietnamese people, older Vietnamese people who actually lived through the war and suffered. Some were the enemy and some were friendly, and some were just very innocent civilians. So we describe a number of them. We tell their personal stories. And then the humanitarian work that we do in Vietnam now centers on assisting disenfranchised and marginalized persons, and there are a number of them described and whom the reader will get to know in the book.
I read just a little bit of it. Of course, I couldn't read the whole book before you got here, but yeah. You know, it's something that would really, you wouldn't be able to put the book down, I think, is the feeling I got. So
it's been described as some people as a page turner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of women have said to us they have to be careful where they read it because they burst into tears, and
yeah.
so they can't read it in a public place.
Just be aware of that then. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bruce Logan and Elaine Head, again, written this memoir, Back to Vietnam, Tours of the Heart. Tonight, you can go and meet these two authors and find out a little bit more about this book at the Kamloops Library downtown, 7 o'clock on the dot. Thanks for being here.
Thanks very much.
We'll be back after a break. Stay with us.